Story recapped here. Today, I'm going to explain a horror and comedy film called Scary Movie 2. Spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. At Hell House, two priests, Father McFeely and Father Harris, try to exorcise a possessed Megan. However, Father McFeely just ends up shooting the girl in the head when she insults his mother. 1 year later, Professor Oldman and his assistant Dwight, who is bound to a wheelchair, find a group of college students that will help in their experiment of awakening the spirits in a haunted home called the Hell House. With proper consideration, the group consists of people who have survived a near-death experience to achieve better results in their experiments. The students are Cindy, Shorty, Ray, Buddy, Brenda, Theo, and Alex. However, these students are nothing more than just bait for the spirits. To get them to go to the Hell House, Professor Oldman deceives the group by saying that they will be partaking in a study about sleep disorders for their class. However, their real motive is simply to find evidence of the spiritual world. They announce to the class that they will be staying over the house for the entire weekend and hand out the address for the place. Before leaving, Buddy runs to catch up with Cindy and flirts with her, but Cindy immediately shuts him down, saying that she recently got out of a bad relationship and isn't ready for another one just yet. However, she offers to be friends with him, and as Buddy agrees, he starts treating her like a pal by giving her a wedgie. Later on, Cindy drives over to Kane Manor, the Hell House, and meets a vulgar talking parrot inside. When she goes further in, she comes across Hansen, the house's caretaker with a genetically malformed hand. He then offers to take Cindy to her room, but she accidentally spills the contents of her bag. Cindy immediately thinks he's a bit creepy, especially after he sniffs her underwear and puts her toothbrush in his mouth. Nonetheless, he helps Cindy with her belongings and leads her to their sleeping quarters. On their way upstairs, Hansen points out the old portraits of the household members who lived in the manor, such as his old master, Hugh Kane. They also come across a clown doll that used to be Kane's favorite toy. Then, when Cindy walks past, the doll smacks her behind. Upstairs, Hansen lets Cindy stay in Kane's wife's room, where she meets Mr. Kittles, the family's cat. Meanwhile, Professor Oldman and Dwight set up their monitoring room for the experiment in the basement, alongside their other equipment. However, Professor Oldman seems to want to use the security cameras to peep on the women when they take a shower. That night, when the group starts to get ready to head upstairs, they hear a girl's voice urging them to play with her, and a basketball suddenly falls down the stairs. So they oblige with the request and start playing around with the ball. Later on, the voice of a lady ghost reaches out to Cindy while she's walking in the hallway. The ghost says she wants to help Cindy because she's in danger, asking her to check the music room. Then, suddenly, Buddy appears and throws a football at Cindy, making her crash into a nearby table. Because of this, Cindy confronts Buddy about their friendship, pointing out that he should be a bit gentler with her as a friend. Buddy then agrees, so Cindy asks him to accompany her to the music room, where they see bloody shoe prints leading to a bookcase. As they investigate, Cindy discovers that the bookcase is a secret door that leads to a hidden study room. She also finds a newspaper that details the murder of Hugh Kane and his mistress in the very house that they're currently staying in. Meanwhile, Buddy finds a portrait of Kane's wife and points out that she has an uncanny resemblance to Cindy, minus her split ends and oily face. On the other hand, Cindy finds a personal chest that presumably belongs to Kane's wife, but Mr. Kittles appears and hisses at her when she's about to take it, so she lets Buddy take it instead. Concurrently, while Alex is sleeping, Kane's ghost visits her room and starts to remove the blankets from her. When she yawns, he takes the opportunity to make her pleasure him, causing her to wake up. They then start making love, resulting in Alex floating all over the room. Afterward, Alex is immediately in love with Kane and even calls herself Mrs. Huey Kane, making Kane's ghost flee. That night, when Cindy tries to open the chest, Mr. Kittles comes into the room and immediately starts attacking her, giving her a scratch on the chest. Cindy then apologizes for using Mr. Kittles' litter box. This just makes the cat angrier and ends up breaking a glass bottle to use against her. Soon, the two engage in a fist fight, but Mr. Kittles knocks out Cindy in the end. When she wakes up, she tells Professor Oldman about the cat right away and says the cat was possessed while Theo tends to her wounds. However, Professor Oldman doesn't believe her, explaining that cats are merely territorial, and while it did attack her, it doesn't mean it's possessed. In Ray's room, a clown doll sits on a rocking chair while he does push-ups. Then, when smoke appears from underneath his door, the clown doll disappears and suddenly beckons Ray underneath the bed. He tries to scare Ray, pulling him underneath the bed and putting him in a chokehold. But Ray is unbothered. Instead, he retaliates by wrapping his comically large manhood around the clown's neck and dragging him back underneath, not allowing him to escape. Back in her bedroom, Cindy is reading Kane's wife's journal when a puff of smoke also appears in her room, a voice telling her that she wants Cindy to know the truth. When Cindy returns downstairs to Professor Oldman, she's visibly possessed and has changed into the dress of Kane's mistress and starts to straddle him. She suddenly acts strange, reenacting an old incident from the wife's perspective. Suddenly, Professor Oldman sees that Ray's the one on top of him, but when he pushes him away, Cindy reappears. Cindy then concludes that Kane's wife found out about her husband's affair with his mistress, presumably why she murdered them in the house. She also asks Ray what he thinks, who's wearing the exact same dress as her. Shorty, on the other hand, gets ready for bed and waters his weed plant with bong water. Then, miraculously, the plant grows at an insane speed and starts to creep up the entire room. Adding to the bizarre situation, the plant reaches for Shorty and rolls him up in his blanket before setting fire to his hair to smoke him like a cigar. Hearing the commotion, Ray, Brenda, and Buddy burst into the room to save Shorty. So Buddy runs to get chips to offer the plant in exchange for their friend. The plant then accepts, and while the group puts out the fire in Shorty's hair, the window breaks behind the plant and strong wind pulls it out of the house. The next day, the group finally realizes that something wrong is going on. Cindy tells them about the secret room and the picture of Kane's wife, to which the group points out their similarities and differences. Meanwhile, Buddy creeps down to the basement and hears a conversation between Professor Oldman and Dwight about the experiment. Dwight says that they should put a stop to the experiment because the spirit is starting to get violent, but Professor Oldman is adamant about finishing the mission, adding that no one should have access to the gates. Shocked, Buddy runs upstairs to report what he overheard, making everyone panic. Although they want to leave, Buddy also points out that Dwight has the keys to the gates, so they won't be able to leave even if they want to. With this, Theo takes matters into her own hands by confidently saying that she'll be able to get the keys from Dwight in 5 minutes. To get the keys, Theo seduces Dwight by letting him touch her, but Dwight is persistent in safekeeping them. So Theo goes down on her knees to seduce him even more, but when she mentions helping him through a favor, Dwight gets angry and pushes her away. He also says that he doesn't need help before bending down and doing it himself. While Dwight is preoccupied, Theo grabs the phone and bashes his head, letting her successfully steal the keys when he gets knocked out. Concurrently, Professor Oldman comes across the ghost of a woman in the basement and leads him to a darker section, only to finish him off. Now that they're all alert to the situation, Dwight leads them all to the basement so he can administer a plan to defeat the spirits. He gives them a gun that uses concentrated energy that will work against ghosts, thermal goggles to see spirits, and a Dixie cup connected by a string as their method of communication, which is the result of their limited funds. He also instructs them to save the guns' ammunition, but the group immediately starts playing with them. Afterward, Dwight tells them to split up, but Brenda complains, saying they should stick together. So in the end, they leave Brenda, Shorty, and Ray together, crying as they think they're probably going to die. After that, when they step outside, Shorty immediately goes missing, leaving Brenda and Ray. Then Ray also leaves Brenda, telling her to wait by the corridor. Meanwhile, Buddy and Cindy find a furnace room and uncover a skeleton that reanimates chasing them. The two split up to escape, but not before Buddy gives Cindy a hug. only to put a piece of paper on her back that says, "Kill her." Cindy then runs away and comes across Shorty hiding in one of the storage rooms. She then tells him that a monster is chasing her, so Shorty kicks her out of the room to save himself. When the skeleton appears in the corner, Cindy runs away, screaming for help. Brenda is mad that Cindy is bringing the skeletons to her location and hopes that Cindy won't see her. But she does. Cindy trips and reaches for Brenda, but she's determined to let Cindy die so that she can escape alone. Soon enough, Cindy gets up by herself and goes to Brenda, shouting that they're going to die. However, when Brenda sees the monster, she's unfazed and says that it's just a skeleton. She then removes the skeleton's head and starts playing with it, tripping the skeleton and rearranging its parts. Once the skeleton is gone, Buddy catches up to the two women, but a ghost appears from behind and lifts Buddy up. Panicking, Cindy yells for Brenda to do something, but she just runs away instead. With no other choice, Cindy helps Buddy by using the gun to shoot the ghost and manages to ward it off. Unfortunately, Buddy injures his head, so Cindy brings him to the lab for a first aid kit. Meanwhile, Alex surprises Kane's ghost by professing her undying love for him by writing, "I love you," on a mirror, sticking her face over his wife's portrait, and having a wedding cake set up in his old study. Kane angrily trashes the room and tries to run away from Alex, but she keeps chasing him even when he throws furniture her way. She wants to get together with Kane, but he tells her that she's just a booty call and drops a chandelier on her, killing her. Back in the storage room, Shorty encounters the same ghost that killed Professor Oldman, showing her true monstrous face. However, Shorty just ends up making love to her and puts a bag over her head. On the other hand, Theo and Dwight also split up, persistent in climbing up the stairs by himself despite being in a wheelchair. He falls numerous times but refuses any help that Theo offers, no matter what. So she ends up just leaving him alone. Once upstairs, he provokes Kane, starting a wheelchair fight between them. They race around the hallways until Dwight's gun runs out of ammo. And as they face off and crash their wheelchairs together, Dwight flies straight out of the window. Thankfully, he's able to grab onto a nearby lamp. Hansen tries to help Dwight, but he won't take his malformed hand and ends up falling to the ground. However, he manages to crawl back to their base, where Ray and Buddy await, helping him back up on a chair. All the while, Hansen gets possessed by Kane, so Cindy, Brenda, and Theo all team up to take him down. They engage in a fight with him and show off various fight poses, but Hansen starts to burst, streaks of light emanating from his face. Just in time, Buddy gets Cindy, Brenda, and Theo away from there to meet up with the rest of the group upstairs. Dwight has a plan to get rid of Kane's ghost, but since he doesn't have a wheelchair anymore, he just has Ray strap him to his waist with a belt so he can stand. He sets up the equipment, but they need someone to lure Kane into the platform. So Cindy volunteers, saying that she's the one that Kane wants due to her resemblance to his wife. Dwight instructs Cindy that she has to get off the platform once Kane is on it. Cindy then calls for Hugh Kane, and true enough, his spirit appears and goes straight to her. With no time to waste, Buddy shouts for Dwight to start the mechanism, but since Cindy is still on the platform, he can't start it, or she will die. Thankfully, Ray runs to get Cindy instead, even though Dwight is still on his back. Then, while almost at the platform, Dwight instructs Buddy to flip the switch for the mechanism, successfully getting rid of Hugh Kane's ghost. The group celebrates the success, despite losing two of their colleagues. 2 months later, Cindy talks about the traumatic experience with the vulgar parrot that she saved from the manor. However, the parrot isn't too happy with Cindy, saying that it would rather kill itself than be with her. Moments later, Cindy gets a visit from Buddy, finally treating her like a proper lady. They also come across a possessed Hansen, and as Cindy screams at Buddy for help, he runs away to save himself. Luckily, Shorty accidentally runs over Hansen with his car, preoccupied with the ghost lady he brought with him from the house.
This is all for Story Recap for today. Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Tell us in the comments if you want us to recap your favorite movie. Watch other of our videos showing on the screen and leave a like because it helps the channel. And I would see you in the next video. Goodbye.